We're funded by you, our listeners, and by 51 Lincoln and Newton, offering the pride of dining room with custom menus and AV capabilities for events and celebrations. 51LincolnNewton.com. Rhino Shield, 50K contractor on this old house during the Newton Center project. Details about the durability of ceramic paint at GoRhinoShield.com. And 10,000 Villages, fair trade gifts for Mother's Day. Locations in Brookline, Cambridge, Downtown Crossing, and Portsmouth and Cranston. 10,000Villages.com.
It's here and now, and another big merger was announced today. This one, two coffee giants, the American company Mondelez International and the Netherlands-based DE Master Blenders. They're getting together in a multi-billion-dollar deal to try and take on Nestle. The new company will be based in the Netherlands, and it comes as corporate mergers and takeovers have reached their highest levels since 2007, driven in part by companies' desire to leave the U.S. for lower taxes abroad. So our question: is the U.S. corporate tax system broken, and are U.S. corporate taxes actually driving jobs overseas? Kenneth Rogoff, professor of economics at Harvard University, joins us in the studio to talk about this. Ken, welcome.
Thank you.
Well, let's start with that basic question. Do you think that jobs are going overseas because companies want to lower their corporate taxes?
Our corporate tax system is not helpful. Our whole tax system is broken. It's hard to look at it in isolation. I mean, some of these big mergers, we're losing the headquarters. I grew up in Rochester, New York. We had Xerox, Bausch and Lomb, Kodak. We lost the jobs. We kept the headquarters. I'd rather keep the jobs than lose the headquarters.
But why are so many companies doing what we have just seen in the pharmaceutical industry, for example, which is companies deciding to move certain jobs, move certain parts of the business overseas in order to lower their tax rate?
Well, we in the United States tax a corporation on its worldwide income if it's based in the United States. So if they can find a way to get it out of the United States, they want to a lower tax place. Now, that's not straightforward. You can't just move without having some reason. But through these mergers, they can say, well, we can't be in both places. We have to be headquartered in one or other. Why don't we make it the Netherlands? And that's called tax inversion, where the big guy buying the little guy but ends up housing in the little guy's headquarters, really for tax reasons.
But we always hear, when we hear about U.S. corporate taxes, and people say, oh, they're the highest on earth. But in fact, a lot of companies don't pay anywhere near the, 35%, sometimes up to 39% if you add in state and local taxes, the rate, because there are loopholes galore.
There are loopholes galore. So at one time, we actually collected a lot of revenue from our corporate taxes back in the 60s, but it has dwindled. I mean, its average is probably around 2% now of our national income, half of what it was in the 60s, and it's half of that now after the financial crisis. Some of this are loopholes that have been put over the years for other reasons, but some of it also has been pressure where corporations can hide profits overseas.
So would it be possible to lower the overall rate and get rid of all the loopholes?
Well, that's the idea, that you'd like to do that, but it's just complicated to do, to treat the corporate tax system in isolation. For one thing, we want a more progressive tax system. If you make the corporate tax really low, then there are a lot of ways they can kind of consume within the corporation, and you have to have a tax system that's integrated. Countries that have high individual taxes tend to have high corporate taxes. One puts pressure on the other.
But what about those loopholes?
No, we'd like a system. We have a system riddled with loopholes all over the place, tax expenditures. Our system is so complicated. It's so Byzantine. It would be desirable to move to a simpler system. And there was a brief ray of light. The Bowles-Simpson Commission produced something really getting rid of a lot of, call them tax expenditures, call them loopholes, that would have simplified things a lot, gone in that direction. But it didn't get the critical support at the right time. It didn't happen. I've been very disappointed that we haven't seen something along those lines. But now the pressure from abroad, where other countries are looking at us and seeing us being static, and they're acting to sort of catalyze this. The UK, the United Kingdom, they've been cutting their taxes to draw in companies, partly defensively, because they were high relative to, say, its neighbor Ireland. They were losing companies, and now they cut, and now U.S. companies are going over to the UK and other
companies
places in
that
Europe.
Probably don't have loopholes in this country. Is that what you're saying?
No, well, not enough. I mean, so it certainly makes a difference. It's easier if you go to a place where you're not having to twist your behavior to do all sorts of crazy things to avoid taxes.
So don't we then end up in a race to the bottom around the world, where every country around the world is trying to get to the lowest tax rate? In the end, if that does happen, these governments are not pulling in nearly as much money as they used to. They can't afford to pay for basic services.
Yeah, that's happening in our globalized world, and you can fight it a little, particularly in things like these pharmaceutical mergers where there aren't that many countries that can house them because they have a lot of intellectual property rights. You can't move that to China because you won't have your property rights anymore under their current system. So there are just a few countries that are really reliable, and you ought to be able to get together and make a deal between them. President Obama has tried, but that is frayed after the financial crisis, where countries are just a little more desperate for revenue, a little more desperate for jobs, and we're seeing these pressures that are hitting us.
Do the countries that do that, if you give company X a tax break and say, come, move here to Y country and we'll give you a tax break, do they end up benefiting in the end? Do the jobs and all the economic activity make up for the fact that they're not pulling in as much tax as the company was paying before?
Well, a lot of times they're pulling in a company they didn't have. So Ireland set up shop with a 12% corporate tax rate, and they pulled business from all over Europe. In some of these mergers, it is way complicated to evaluate who's going to lose and who's going to gain. In the pharmaceutical one between Pfizer and AstraZeneca, the British were the ones who are going to end up housing the merged company if it goes through. They're worried about losing jobs because they still think the power will be an American company. They will look to cut these very high-value research jobs that are build the knowledge base in their economy. So it's certainly not a simple answer to that question.
What do you make of the argument from the financier Steve Ratner, who's saying in the New York Times, scrap the corporate tax system altogether and just tax people on their investments, tax them on capital gains, raise taxes elsewhere so that companies themselves are not having to pay taxes and aren't making business decisions based on that? Just tax the people at the companies.
In a perfect world, that is the ideal. So you'd actually tax consumption, have some sort of flat tax on consumption. And the only trick there is that a lot of consumption goes on within the corporation, and you have to figure out how to do that. We don't live in a perfect world, so the corporate tax is a way of preventing, say, individuals from holding their money in the corporation and maybe pulling it out some year where very conservative government gets elected and the rate's low and they pull out all their money. So I think the corporate tax has been a compromise we've had to have, but the global economy sure hits at us.
Ken Rogoff, why did nothing happen on this issue? Why didn't corporate tax reform or tax reform in general happen this year? There was a lot of talk earlier on that it might be something both sides would get together on.
I mean, the paralysis in Washington since the financial crisis has been covered everything. There have been so few issues where they've been able to agree. And I said there was this moment of light where the two sides, the gang of eight, from both sides, agreed on what they do. They had a good policy. It seemed like it might happen. Then it didn't. And now, I don't know when.
I feel like that could end almost every segment that we do on this program. It's just nothing happening in Washington. Kenneth Rogoff from Harvard, thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you.
This is Here and Now.
Funding for Here and Now comes from Lumosity.com, a brain training program designed by neuroscientists that has been used by 50 million people worldwide. More at Lumosity.com. And Eton, offering the American Red Cross radio line, a portable solar-powered radio with cell phone charger and flashlight for emergencies or travel. Now at Radio Shack. We are funded by you, our listeners, and by the Commons in Lincoln, Lincoln's life care retirement community, with brand new cottages and apartments available for immediate occupancy. Learn more at thecommonsinlincoln.com. Porter Airlines. Porter lands you at downtown Toronto City Airport, a direct flight from Boston Logan. More Toronto flight details at flyporter.com. And Roach Brothers and Sudbury Farms, celebrating Mother's Day with gourmet gifts, sweet treats, custom floral arrangements, and fresh ingredients to make Mom's meal special. I'm Sasha Pfeiffer. Mother's Day is Sunday, and now's your chance to send flowers that mean more. Send Winston flowers and support WBUR at the same time. Here's how.
Call 800-909-9287 or go to our website, WBUR.org, where you can see the 4 arrangements that we're offering. And you'll be able to send one of these, or if you want to send 4 of them, send 4 of them to anyone you're remembering this Mother's Day anywhere in the country. And your gift helps pay for the news here on WBUR. Again, the number is 800-909-9287. But you will benefit if you act quickly.
800-909-9287. You can see the choices as well at WBUR.org. And today only, there is a 10% discount on all 4 of these beautiful arrangements from Winston Flowers. So you can save a little money, know that you have done something good for WBUR, and know that you have gotten a beautiful gift for someone special in your life. Again, check out all 4 choices at WBUR.org.
Really, today is it. This is the last day that you can take advantage of the 10% discount that we're offering on these Winston flowers, and they are beautiful flowers. You can get a large, a really stunning orchid plant that I think we're lucky enough to be surrounded by all 4 of them in the studio today on this beautiful day. And the orchid, don't you think, Doug, looks like it belongs in a hotel lobby almost? It's enormous. And then we have 2 smaller spring arrangements, and we have a wonderful flowering hydrangea plant. So choose one of them, choose as many as you like, send them to your mom or to your grandmother or to your mother-in-law, whomever you're remembering this weekend, and know that your gift is helping to pay for the news. You know, a lot of our listeners, Doug, they do this every year.
Right.
Every year. It's become a tradition. We spoke with Christine Parsons. She listens to WBUR in Medford about why she sends her flowers from WBUR.
I'm not really a sender of flowers. It's not a thing that I do to mark occasions. But when I started doing it for BUR and I got such a great response, I had to keep doing it. It's a tradition to send flowers on Mother's Day, and it's my tradition to send them through WBUR.
Thanks so much, Christine. If you want a guaranteed reaction from these beautiful flowers, a guaranteed good response from the person you're remembering this Mother's Day, then order them now.
800-909-9287 or see all 4 choices at WBUR.org. And remember, today is the last day for the 10% discount on any of the options.
And remember, you're getting beautiful flowers and you're helping to support the news. Thank you.
We are funded by you, our listeners, and by Volante Farms in Needham, with an array of homegrown flowers and hanging plants now in bloom for Mother's Day. VolanteFarms.com. LaSalle Village, engaging retirement living on the LaSalle College campus, where being a senior on campus takes on a whole new meaning. Lifelong learning at LaSalleVillage.org. And Aces and Galatea, the East Coast premiere of the Mark Morris Dance Group's dance opera at the City Schubert Theater, May 15th through 18th. More at CelebritySeries.org. Funding for Here and Now comes from Brigham and Women's Hospital, leading an international study on early Alzheimer's treatment to prevent memory loss before it begins. More in a video or white paper at brighamandwomens.org/Alzheimer's. Brigham and Women's Hospital, life-giving breakthroughs. And Constant Contact, whose toolkit provides online marketing resources from email to events to social. Learn more at ConstantContact.com.
From NPR and WBUR Boston, I'm Robin Young. It's Here and Now. And remember the NSA's bulk collection of American phone data, something NSA leaker Edward Snowden made us all aware of? Well, this week, members of 2 congressional committees are hashing out legislation that would limit but not end that collection. Republicans on both the House Intelligence and House Judiciary Committee agree with President Obama that phone companies should hold on to the data, not the NSA. But let's see where their differences are. John Hudson is a reporter for Foreign Policy magazine. And John, just to flesh that out, competing bills, one from the House Judiciary Committee. And you write that Mike Rogers, chair of the House Intelligence Committee, is a security hawk. And he thought the other committee, the Judiciary Committee's bill, watered down the NSA's abilities to track terrorists, was too limiting on the NSA. But now you've spoken to him. Today you say he's had a change of tone. So what's changed here?
Absolutely. So this is a big breakthrough that's just happened in the last few days. Mike Rogers, who is a longtime defender of the NSA, in an interview with me said that he is very encouraged. He says